The most dangerous person in the room isn't the loud, boastful one demanding the spotlight. It's the one quietly sitting in the corner, playing the victim and, slowly siphoning your sanity. Welcome to the debate.
Yeah, it's a completely different kind of threat.
It really is. Today, we're looking past the stereotypes of the arrogant show-off narcissist, and we're diving into a much quieter and, I would argue, far more destructive pathology, which is covert narcissism.
Right, the invisible abuse.
Exactly. We're examining the clinical texts, diagnostic frameworks, and trauma recovery literature to basically decode this hidden psychological underworld. I approach his material from the perspective of behavioral profiling.
And I come at it from the trenches of trauma-informed therapy.
Right. And to me, from a profiling standpoint, covert narcissism, which is often called vulnerable narcissism in the literature, is a highly calculated, predatory system of coercive control. The covert narcissist explicitly masks their grandiosity to extract power and narcissistic supply, mostly through passive aggression and, weaponized pity.
I hear that, but while the behavioral output absolutely looks manipulative to an outside observer, framing these individuals as strategic masterminds gives them, frankly, far too much credit.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. What we are actually looking at is a pathological structural fragility. It's driven by toxic shame. But more importantly, I think obsessing over their level of calculation distracts us from the true focus, which is the devastating, completely invisible emotional toll this pathology exacts on the victim's nervous system.
Well, let's start by looking at what the clinical literature actually tells us about the structure of narcissistic personality disorder, specifically through the mask model.
Sure.
Because the core of the pathology is the exact same for both the overt grandiose narcissist and the covert narcissist. They both possess a profound lack of affective empathy, a deep-seated entitlement, and this absolute need to exploit others for self-esteem regulation.
Right. The core structure is identical.
But I want to be very precise here about what we mean by affective empathy, because people get this wrong all the time.
They do. It's a crucial distinction. It really trips people up.
Right. So cognitive empathy is the ability to understand that someone is in pain. Affective empathy is the ability to actually feel that pain with them, to, care that they are hurting.
Exactly.
The covert narcissist has cognitive empathy. They know you're crying. They know exactly what buttons they pushed to make you cry. But they completely lack the affective empathy to actually care.
Yeah.
The difference between the grandiose and the covert is merely the strategy of extraction. The grandiose narcissist demands admiration through boasting, right? But the covert narcissist demands sympathy through suffering.
They do rely heavily on the victim narrative, yes.
By presenting as shy, introverted, or perpetually depressed, they intentionally weaponize vulnerability. They specifically target driven, empathetic women, natural caretakers, usually because they want to attach themselves to competence while secretly, bitterly resenting it.
I mean, I see why some clinicians view this as a predatory move, but...
Oppressive fragility. But let me give you a different perspective. That's not depression. That is weaponized guilt. It is a camouflage designed specifically to disarm the defenses of highly empathetic people.
See, I come at it from a completely different way. If we only look at their intent, we miss how this pathology completely destroys the victim's reality.
How so?
Well, honestly, it is incredibly frustrating to see this framed as a game of chess, as if they're sitting in a lair plotting their next move.
I'm not saying they have a lair.
But you're calling it calculated camouflage. It is not chess. It is a psychological freefall. Beneath that covert exterior is an intensely unstable, shame-saturated self-esteem.
Okay, but...
When their fragile ego is threatened, they don't plot. They implode. The real tragedy here, the part we need to be focused on, from the literature, is the victim's reality. What happens to the partner of a covert narcissist is a rapid descent into the fog of cognitive dissonance.
Let's define that for the listener, because cognitive dissonance gets thrown around as a buzzword a lot online. It's the mental discomfort of holding two conflicting beliefs at the same exact time, right?
Exactly. So the victim is holding The core belief that, this person loves me and is fundamentally good, right alongside the actual reality that this person is consistently treating me with profound cruelty.
Right.
The brain simply cannot reconcile those two things, so it creates a fog. A trauma bond is formed precisely because the victim keeps trying to fix a wounded bird. The narcissist's structural deficit creates an environment where the victim's reality is slowly, systematically dismantled. But it's dismantled because the narcissist is flailing to protect their own ego, not because they are a master manipulator running a script.
Wait, I need to stop you there, because I am struggling with this interpretation. You're saying this isn't calculated?
I'm saying the driver is pathology, not a conscious, evil master plan.
But when someone gives their partner the silent treatment for 3 solid days, right, and then magically acts like everything is fine, how can that not be a conscious strategy? Let's look at the mechanics of the manipulation itself.
Okay, let's look at it.
Take that classic tactic of the silent treatment, or when they withdraw into low-effort situations. Spending 12 hours gaming, stonewalling, staring at a screen, offering absolutely zero emotional reciprocity. You see a fragile ego imploding. I see a highly effective coercive tactic.
It operates as a tactic, yes, but the origin...
But wait, look at how they use pity. It is a trap. Think of the covert narcissist like an anglerfish in the deep, dark ocean.
Oh, wow. An anglerfish.
Seriously, hear me out. They dangle this glowing, fragile lure of pity and victimhood in front of their face. The empathetic prey, usually someone who really prides themselves on being a healer or a caretaker, sees someone who just needs love.
Right. They see potential.
Exactly. They see a light in the dark, someone who just needs a safe space, and they swim right toward it. The moment they do, the jaws snap shut. The emotional withdrawal, the silent treatment, it is specifically designed to force the partner to chase them. It forces the partner to overfunction, to constantly apologize, creating this deeply enmeshed imbalance of power, where the narcissist holds all the cards without ever having to raise their voice. If you're listening to this and thinking, well, my partner just shuts down because they're overwhelmed, you have to look at the result. The result is that you are doing all the emotional labor.
I have to stop you right there because focusing on the anglerfish metaphor makes it sound like a conscious, malicious, predetermined strategy. And doing so completely ignores the biological hijacking taking place inside the victim.
Biological hijacking?
Yes. It is not just a power play. It is a profound dysregulation of human physiology. We absolutely have to talk about the cortisol and dopamine roller coaster.
Unpack that. How does a simple silent treatment trigger a biological roller coaster?
Okay, so in a healthy relationship, your nervous system has a stable baseline, right? If you argue, there is a rupture and then you have a healthy repair.
Sure.
But with a covert narcissist, the victim's brain is subjected to violent neurochemical swings. When the narcissist withdraws into that silent treatment, the victim's brain interprets that sudden loss of connection as a literal threat to survival.
Really? Survival?
Yes, the brain is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. They are in a state of absolute panic, a fight or flight response. They become desperate to restore connection just to make the physical anxiety stop.
So they're essentially going into chemical withdrawal.
Yes, exactly. And then, what happens? The narcissist eventually relents. They offer a crumb of affection, or they play the wounded victim again, crying and saying they just feel, so broken.
Right. The pity play again.
And when the victim comforts them, it triggers a massive release of dopamine and oxytocin in the victim's brain. It's called intermittent reinforcement.
The slot machine effect.
It's the exact same psychological mechanism that makes slot machines so addictive. You never know when the payout is coming, so you keep pulling the lever. Over years, the victim becomes literally, biologically addicted to this cycle of abuse.
That's horrifying.
It is. This isn't just about who holds the power in a relationship like your anglerfish theory suggests. This chronic stress load leads to severe somatic symptoms. In the literature, we are talking about profound brain fog, memory loss, chronic fatigue, autoimmune flare-ups. The body is keeping the score of an abuse the mind cannot even name.
Look, I don't disagree that the physiological impact on the victim is catastrophic. That much is undeniable in the literature. But I argue that the naming problem you just mentioned exists because the tactics are so flawlessly executed by the narcissist.
Flawlessly executed.
Yes, if the biological response is as severe as you're claiming, how does the narcissist trigger it without anyone else noticing? From an outsider's perspective, they look entirely harmless.
Well, they don't do it in public.
Exactly. Which brings us to dog whistle abuse and word salad arguments. These are the invisible tactics that erode reality.
Invisible is the perfect word for it, honestly.
Right. Because the dog whistle is a sound only the target can hear. In this context, it's a micro-insult. It's a heavy sigh when the partner mentions a personal achievement. It's a highly specific, dead-eyed look across a dinner table that signals, you are neglecting me and you will pay for it when we get in the car.
Yeah, the punishment is always deferred.
Or weaponized incompetence, ruining a holiday by being just slightly too depressed to participate, forcing the partner to manage everyone's emotions. To anyone else in the room, it's nothing. They just look like a quiet, maybe slightly awkward person.
Right.
But to the victim, it is a precise psychological strike designed to induce that cortisol spike you mentioned. And if the victim tries to hold them accountable, they deploy the word salad.
Ah, yes. The conversational maze.
Exactly. It's a dizzying array of deflections. You try to bring up a basic boundary like, please don't speak to me in that tone. Instantly, they are bringing up past arguments, playing the ultimate victim, twisting your words so rapidly that an hour later, you are apologizing for something you didn't even do in 2019.
It's exhausting.
It takes high-level cognitive functioning to track a conversation that poorly on purpose. That is not a reflex of shame. That is a tactical evasion of accountability.
This is exactly what trips victims up. Because there is no black eye, There is no physical bruise, so the victim has absolutely nothing to show the outside world. If you're listening and thinking, maybe they just had a bad day, a heavy sigh is an abuse, that is exactly the trap we're talking about.
It minimizes the damage.
Completely. The dog whistling and the word salad create the ultimate naming problem. How do you call the police over a heavy sigh? It can't. How do you explain to your friends that your partner cleaning the kitchen was actually a passive-aggressive punishment?
You sound crazy.
You sound completely crazy, and that is where the real psychological damage takes root. The self-betrayal wound.
How does that manifest in the victim's behavior, clinically speaking?
Well, the victim spends years doubting their own memory. They think, maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I am too demanding. They internalize the narcissist narrative. This completely erodes their executive function, their ability to plan, focus, and make decisions.
Because their brain is fried from the cortisol.
Exactly. So the empathetic partner begins fawning. Fawning is a trauma response where you suppress your own anger, your own exhaustion, and constantly appease the abuser to avoid conflict. They are constantly apologizing for being, quote-unquote, too sensitive while walking on eggshells.
It's a terrible way to live.
It is. They try to intellectualize the abuse, reading attachment theory books, trying to hack the relationship to provide a safer space for the narcissist's inner child. It is a tragic irony.
How so?
The victim is using all their psychological insight to try to heal someone who is simultaneously using that empathy as a weapon against them. The cognitive dissonance is paralyzing.
It is paralyzing until the boundary is finally set. And I think that transition is where we see the true nature of this pathology.
The collapse.
Right. What happens when the empathetic partner finally wakes up, sets a firm boundary, or the narcissist just loses their primary source of supply? They experience what the clinical literature calls a narcissistic collapse. The mask slips, and what is underneath is chilling.
It is.
When their fragile identity is threatened, they do not just curl up into a ball of harmless shame. They engage in surveillance.
They panic. Their entire false self is crumbling.
I hear you on the panic, but I just don't buy that it's merely a panic response. Look at the behavior. They engage in what is termed symbolic intrusion.
The stalking behaviors?
Yes. They will obsessively monitor their ex-partner. They will show up at shared nostalgic places, a favorite restaurant, a specific park, recreating sentimental memories to intrude on the victim's emotional space without making direct contact.
It's very eerie.
They use burner phones. They send late-night emails referencing inside jokes, This isn't a panic attack. It's a possessive, sadistic compulsion to reclaim dominance. They are terrified of being forgotten, yes, but their response to that terror is a highly calculated campaign of psychological stalking disguised as romantic nostalgia. They want the victim to know, I am still in your head.
I see the surveillance and I agree, it is terrifying for the victim, but you are still viewing it through the lens of a mastermind. I look at the aftermath of the collapse and I see the ultimate desperate defense mechanism, which is the preemptive smear campaign.
Oh, the smear campaign is brutal.
The covert narcissist knows that if their victim speaks out, their carefully curated public image as the misunderstood, good person will be shattered. That shame is intolerable to them, so they go to the community first. They go to mutual friends, family, even colleagues, and here is where it gets incredibly dark. They weaponize therapy speak.
Oh, the therapy speak is their absolute favorite new tool.
It's everywhere now. They will sit down with your best friend and say, I am so worried about her mental health. Her unhealed attachment issues are making her so toxic and emotionally unavailable. I've tried everything to support her, but she's just so triggered.
It's brilliant in an evil way.
They paint the actual victim as the cold, calculating abuser and themselves as the devastated, abandoned caretaker. They use the language of healing to isolate the victim from their support network.
Which is exactly why I call it a predatory system. They are manipulating the entire social ecosystem. They are taking the exact verbiage the victim used to try and save the relationship, and they are flipping it to destroy the victim's credibility.
But they are doing it out of a profound, pathologically desperate need to avoid shame. It is a survival mechanism for an ego that cannot tolerate reality. And this is why I constantly warn my clients, standard couples counseling with a covert narcissist is profoundly dangerous.
Oh, I could not agree more. It is essentially walking into an ambush.
Completely. I mean, picture this. A standard therapist who isn't highly specialized in coercive control or personality disorders sits in that room. They see a quiet, self-effacing, anxious individual who is using all the right I feel statements,
Playing the victim perfectly.
Then they look at the actual victim, who is visibly exhausted, angry, and highly reactive because they've been dog-whistled for 5 years. The narcissist will manipulate the therapist into believing the victim's reactive anxiety, their completely reasonable, complex PTSD response to years of gaslighting, is actually the root problem of the marriage.
The victim just looks crazy.
Exactly. The victim ends up being pathologized by the very professional they went to for help. This is why recovery must center entirely on the victim learning to trust their own somatic reality.
Somatic reality. Okay, explain what you mean by that, because I think that is a vital concept for anyone listening who feels like they are currently losing their minds.
Somatic reality is the physical truth your body tells you even when your mind is deeply confused. Victims of covert narcissists have to learn that when their stomach clenches, when their heart races, when their body feels a chronic, low-grade anxiety around this person, that physical sensation is the truth.
The body doesn't lie.
Your body does not lie. The words coming out of the narcissist's mouth might be perfectly calm. They might be saying, I love you, I'm just trying to understand you. But if your nervous system is screaming that you are in danger, you are in danger. They must trust their body's anxiety response over the narcissist's calm, gaslighting words.
I entirely agree that couples counseling is a trap, and that the body's alarm system is the only reliable compass the victim has left. Any attempt to mediate with a covert narcissist is just handing them a brand new arena for manipulation. But this is exactly why my framework is so crucial for recovery. Seeing covert narcissism as a predatory, coercive control system is empowering.
How so? Because honestly, calling them a predator can be absolutely terrifying for a victim who still loves them.
Because when a victim stops looking at their partner as a wounded bird that needs to be fixed and starts looking at them as a highly efficient machine designed to extract emotional supply, the fog lifts.
I see.
It allows the victim to stop making excuses for their abuser. It cuts through the trauma bond. You can't heal a machine that is functioning exactly as it was built to function. If you view them as fragile and chained, your empathy keeps you hooked. You keep trying to pour love into a bottomless bucket.
Right.
Recognizing the machinery of manipulation gives the victim the psychological permission they need to close the door, lock it, and walk away without guilt.
But that guilt is incredibly sticky because the victim's core identity is usually built around being a healer, a caretaker, a good empath.
Which is what was exploited in the first place.
Yes, recognizing the pathological fragility of the narcissist is, in my view, secondary to validating the victim's invisible trauma and repairing their shattered self-trust. The recovery isn't just about realizing the narcissist is a bad actor. It's about the victim forgiving themselves for participating in their own gaslighting.
That makes sense.
It's about repairing that self-betrayal wound we talked about. When the lights finally come back on for these survivors, it doesn't happen all at once. It's one circuit at a time. They suddenly realize they can make a choice, like what to have for dinner or what to watch on TV, without anticipating a heavy sigh or a dog whistle comment. The profound work is restoring the victim's nervous system to a baseline of safety, something they frankly haven't felt in years, if ever.
Well, what we undeniably converge on is this. Trying to fix or heal a covert narcissist is a dangerous, futile trap. Pouring your empathy into them does not heal their core wound. It merely provides them with more supply to consume. The more you give, the more they will take, until your executive function is entirely eroded by the stress.
Exactly. Their victimhood is not a wound to be healed. It is a weapon to be deployed. We may remain in tension over whether the narcissist is a conscious, sadistic predator calculating their next move, or a tragically broken, shame-saturated shell acting out on a toxic reflex.
Right.
But the clinical advice remains identical. You cannot save them, and trying will only destroy you.
Which really speaks to the sheer complexity of personality disorders. The clinical texts suggest there is even more to explore here, particularly when we look at how covert narcissism overlaps with the dark triad, where vulnerable narcissistic traits intersect with Machiavellianism and psychopathy.
Oh, that's a whole other rabbit hole.
It is, but that is a journey for another day. For now, the listener is left to determine for themselves whether they are dealing with a mastermind pulling the strings or a fragile shell desperately defending against its own emptiness.
And regardless of which interpretation you lean toward, the mandate is exactly the same. Protect your sanity, trust your body signals, and step out of the fog.
Because remember, the most dangerous person in the room isn't the loud, boastful one demanding the spotlight. It's the one quietly sitting in the corner, playing the victim, and slowly siphoning your sanity.